Hello and welcome to another edition of Story Behind the Story. Today we have with us guests from all over the globe. Goans, no doubt, but from far away. From England, from Kuwait, from Saudi Arabia, and our local guests. The issue is expat Goans, seafarers. In Goa, it's been a rough ride for seafarers. Many of them are still stuck on boats waiting to come home. There are people also on far shores. We Goans are pretty nomadic. We have right from days immemorial, we have been seeking far shores. We've been for better prospects, for economic reasons, for better quality of life. Guys, welcome to our show. I would like to introduce our guests from overseas first. Imtiaz Sheikh from the UK, welcome.
Thank you.
Jude Coutinho from Saudi Arabia, welcome.
Thank you.
Sebastian Norona from Kuwait, welcome.
Thank you.
And Jude Pereira from the UK too, welcome.
Good
And in
morning.
the studio with me is a lady who's been fighting for seafarers. She may not be a seafarer herself, but she's been one of the people most prominent in that fight to get our Goan seafarers home. Gina Pereira, welcome. And with me is Malcolm Pereira. No relations. We have three Pereiras on the show today, but no relations in different places. Malcolm has been a maverick. There are lots of stories about him, good, bad, ugly. We are not getting into it. But here, he has come here to give a different perspective to the whole issue. He has some very interesting points, and those we would like to take. Malcolm, welcome. Okay, guys, I would like to start with Gina first, if you don't mind, since she has been in the forefront of getting our seafarers back home. Her husband is a seafarer. And what struck me first when I first came to know about Gina was when I'd heard about the issue that she had taken up, but when I came to know that there was a lady who wanted to go on a hunger strike outside the chief minister's house, residence, Mahalakshmi in Altin. Then my reporters came and told me, I said, hey, that's very interesting, we should do that. So Gina, tell me, what made you take that step?
Yeah, because ultimately, as I used to keep seeing his briefings, okay, and what made me this is after every whatever topics he had, seafarers was at the end, okay, and the chapter used to be closed. I mean, we tried contacting to many companies also, like to know what is going on. So they told us that it is your government who is not working on it. So we tried the first interview also that I had. I tried giving, telling the CM also and the authorities also that better take an action, or else I will have to go for a hunger strike. And that's what made me to go for a hunger strike, because none of them were listening. Seafarers were nowhere into the picture. It was like, they were not interested to get them.
Malcolm, you were saying that GSA is, you were saying that, okay, could you give us, you have interesting things to say on the seafarer issue. Could you tell us in brief, could you explain what is the scene?
See, what it was misguidance from day one.
What do you mean by misguidance?
Misguidance in the sense they were bringing the seafarers back. But nobody brought seafarers back. Seafarers were brought back by their companies, and the Indian government and the local government had some part of it to bring them here. But rest everything was politicized, and you came to know on the 25th, on the Seafarers Day, all of them were on different platforms. One was on the Congress platform, the GSA was on the BJP platform, and the Venzi Viegas was on the the ARC platform. So what it was, if it was not politics?
Okay, let me stop you on this point. We can discuss this later.
Yeah.
I would like to bring in Imtiaz. Imtiaz, in England, now there are a lot of people, from what I hear, who want to come back. First of all, I would like to ask you why. Why do people, I mean, Goan origin, want to come back when situation here is not that hot, and probably in UK you would get much better facilities. Why, in case I would like to know more importantly. Of course, this question will go to all, but first with you.
Sure. A simple example: when a child gets hurt, runs to his mum first. So during this pandemic, it is very normal human behavior to run towards a place where his heart or her heart, the person's heart is, and that person mentally and physically feels that I'll be safe. So no matter where or which part of the world they are, they will definitely make way back home, and home Goa is our home at the end.
There are people wanting to come back to Goa still.
Yes, of course. There are quite many, in fact, who are still waiting to go to Goa. In fact, in the phase 4 July flights, quite a lot eagerly waiting to book their flights to Goa. There's only one flight that has been authorized for us from UK to Goa, or else all the others were to Mumbai. And then from Mumbai, my friend Jude and we organized transport and guided them to make their way to Goa. But we have so many in Goa as well who are waiting to come back here to UK or to their family. So there are both sides, both ends. We have people, families waiting to reunite.
This pandemic has really changed a lot of things. Some things that we took for granted, we never thought of it. Sebi, I would like to bring you in on this. Now in Kuwait, there have been a lot of people who want to come back, and Kuwait is one place where there are a lot of Goans. Could you give us a general this of what's happening in Kuwait and what is the present situation and in there? Sebi.
Sure, Glenn. Presently, we are under the lockdown. Generally, there are a few hotspots in Kuwait, like places like, maybe not all have heard, Mabula, Farwania, etc., which are under complete lockdown. Now, since the 12th of March, when the lockdown began, till the 21st of this month, the lockdown was in such a way where people had lost their jobs. Some were their jobs were on, but they were not getting their salaries and things like that. So there was a lot of distress financially. A lot of Goans who had just come in, maybe in the month of February, and they got caught in such a bad situation where they were desperate to get home. It was like a shock for them, and they just wanted to get back. In the midst of this, the government really did nothing. We were at like the fag end of the government's priority list, I guess. And every other state, like people from Hyderabad, from Kerala, from elsewhere, Lucknow and here and there, they were having flights. And I was wondering why? There are so many Goans in Kuwait. Don't none of them want to go back? Come on, can't happen. So that's when I tried to get in touch with my friend Valencio Rodriguez, who's in Goa, and he said, okay, fine, why not we try? And when we started this activity on the 27th of May, I'm telling you, I haven't slept well since that day. And yeah, I'll tell you why. I realized that day. Yeah, scary. I'll tell you why, because I then realized that there are so many Goans who want to go back home. People who have lost their jobs, who have no money to pay for their food, for their rent. Also, people who had come in on a visit visa to visit their children or their parents or whatever, stuck here, and they want to get back. So that's when we began, and we found out that yes, we finally managed to put together a flight of 161 passengers. It was an Indigo flight that left and landed on last Friday, the 26th of June 2020. The first Kuwait to Goa direct charter flight. I received a lot of help from my friend Rajesh Venugopal, who is a part of Capico Travels in Kuwait, for arranging this entire arrangement. And I would like here to take a few names, take this opportunity to take a few names to thank Valencio Rodriguez with his team, Altaf Sheikh, Shweta Narvekar, Sallu Akhtar, and people who helped me here, Prince Prasad Talkar, who is in Kuwait, my wife, Dr. Loretta Fernandez, Mr. Theo Rodriguez, who is in Kuwait also, and a special thanks I would like to say here to Sri Alexo Reginaldo and to Sri Ron County. And finally, the flight took off, landed. The people are back home after their quarantine, after their tests. Today, while we speak, I'm receiving messages from the passengers saying that we finally reached home. We are safe with our families. Thank you very much, etc., etc. So yes, we are trying to put together another flight. Let's see when.
Really nice. And I'll get back to you on.
Yes, yes.
I want to bring in Jude Coutinho from
Yes.
Saudi Arabia. Jude, you are also you have also put together a flight like this to get people from Saudi back. Could you give us some details on that, Jude?
Saudi Arabia, compared to the other part of Gulf, we have a very, difficult situation because we are a huge country, and the location wise, we have got Goans in Jeddah, Riyadh, Dammam, and then we have got the riggers who are at offshore. So it's a very challenging situation to get all these people together. The second thing is we don't have a big community in Saudi Arabia. Okay, it's not like in Kuwait or in Dubai, because I was in touch with everyone in Kuwait. Okay, Sebi had a list of 400 people. Dubai had a list of 3 flights with him, and I had got 3 people with me. So my family was here. They come and go. My kids are grown up. So February they came, and 15th March there was a lockdown in Saudi Arabia. And I told my daughter, don't worry, in next 2 weeks it will be open. But somehow things really went bad. And we being here for the last 22 years and being in a position where we have got some connection in society, I saw it was difficult to send my family back. And finally this idea came, yes, I was with a Magnolian prayer group with a few Goans knowing around. I said, yes, there are a lot of people down there who are suffering like my family, and I should reach out to them. So I got hold of one guy called Ricardo D'Souza. He's from Valley, and he also is active in the prayer group at the American embassy. I said, come on, let us do something. And he introduced us to someone in the embassy, and we started the process. And just like all of us, I think so, we started by writing letters to everyone, and we are getting no responses and whatever it was. Suddenly, Goa website, if you know, the Goa government had put on the website, register yourselves. So a lot of Goans had registered on this website. And luckily for us, one of our boys, he managed to connect with Savekar and get a copy of an email which was sent to the embassy. So I don't say my government was totally silent. Yes, people like Savekar and all, yes, they had sent a message to the embassy, and this somehow we got hands on this email and the list of people, and from there we started off with a list of 98 people, phoning each one of them, trying to see who are the people around, and this is how the journey really gave a kick-off. So I really thank whatever it is. Now I got 174, but
Flight leaving? Has it left? Leaving?
10th of July.
Oh, 10. Okay, okay.
And luckily to share that moment, although people might say a lot about the government, suddenly I found, yes, the government cannot talk to each one of us, but he's there, over there. And it is very surprising to tell you, if you all know about the SOP for the charter flight, which is introduced by the embassies. Okay, this was first declared on 20th of June, yeah. And on 23rd, my papers were ready. I submitted to the Indian embassy. He said, Jude, go ahead, it's fine, except try to avoid people of faraway states. You might not get approval. And I would really like to thank here Anthony D'Souza, the NRI director. By God's grace or whatever it is, everyone complained that he never replied. But with me, he was good. I don't know why. So really, I would like to thank him.
Jude, I would like to bring Jude Pereira back from England on this note. Jude, can you give us an idea of UK right now? Whether the Goans there are scared, whether they are hopeful, whether they are resigned to this new reality. Could you give us a general idea of what's going on in people's minds around that, in your area? In England, in UK.
So I think the best word is confused. People are really confused what to do. Okay. And I feel sad for them. Honestly, from my perspective, by God's grace, I'm a well-established businessman. I've been in the Gulf for 26 years, and now I'm in London for the last 4 years, and passion to help Goans all over, and people know me. I saw Imtiaz firefighting this battle alone by himself, and then I got involved in it. And on a daily basis, we had different challenges. We had different challenges in terms of. Some of the people were laid off of jobs. There were some of them who were students who came here on an exchange program, which was supposed to be for 7 days, and they've landed up being here for 3 months. There were people that have lost their close near and dear ones. There are people who don't even have money for food. There are people who barely have money to book a flight. Beyond imagination. Yeah. So it's this pandemic for people like us is the new future, as we call it. It's the new normal. But for them, they are lost. How do they react? Where do they go for help? Who's there to consult them? Who's there to just listen to them? I've been spending hours just counseling beyond helping them going back. It's just about counseling them, guiding them, comforting them, giving them that strength that, okay, even if your government is not there, no one is around, we are there. We are there to hear you. We are there to support you.
We've almost run out of time, and let's head in for a short break. See you on the other side. Welcome back. Gina, you have been listening to our brothers and from all over the place. Now, Gina, I would want a specific. There are a lot of seafarers here. Goans are famous. They go on ships. They are on cruises. They are on tankers. They are on ocean-going things. So, I would like to know the mindset of the Goans now on those ships, and what is the feeling like? Everybody wants to come home, of course. But now, what exactly, could you explain to us in this, what exactly has been going, because you've been talking to a lot of them?
Yeah. Finally, when the government also was not answerable, okay, like not listening to their plea. Finally, some of the crew started going on hunger strike.
Wow. Okay.
It is not only one. It is like Nudam, MS Nudam also went. CMV also went on the hunger strike. And our Goans are there on it.
Let me interrupt. What are you saying that because they were not being brought back home,
yes,
and they were stuck,
yes,
that is why they went on hunger strike?
Yes.
Will you elaborate?
Yeah. The thing is, it was almost 90 days. I think now it is 95 days. Okay, plus.
Okay. Yes.
So
plus.
yeah. So they were not getting any answers, like no matter even talking to their head authorities and all, it was always, landing permission is lacking from India government, something, any paperwork that has been left. So only India was left over there. So finally they got frustrated, and what they did is they thought of coming up for a hunger strike. There was CMV who actually pleaded to the government that do something. So ultimately they showed us the entire mail process where it says that landing process was not given by Indian government. Okay, there's another ship also in Philippines. Those boys also frustrated. They're like, do something. But if you ask me, Indians, there are 20,000 plus yet.
Where, on the ships?
Yes.
20,000 Indians
yes,
on cruise liners?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yes.
100%.
And okay, let me bring Malcolm in on this. Malcolm, now you tell me one thing. Now this is a. See, I know you look for conspiracy theories, but why could you tell me why this is happening, and why is there no pressure being put from the families? See, I have seen, but there are few people, and now many of the people even associated with you and saying, no, everything is fine. There is no noise. Initially it started and then things have cooled off. If such huge numbers are still outside, now why is this not hitting the headlines every day? Why? We have been living in the same system for so long.
Yeah, for so long, but it is not changing. The system has not been changed still yet. Every time it is we search from one excuse to another. So we have to change the system first. All the time we are talking about bringing them back, but nobody is bringing them back. I don't know these things.
Are you are the conspiracy theorist. You
This
should,
thing-
you
this
should
thing-
have some
No,
ideas.
no. I have ideas about our Goan thing, but all those things, Gina is having good ideas, because she was after it.
Gina, sorry. Now, why you think our people are not being brought back? Why?
I mean, if you go to say somewhere, even our government is lacking. Whereas if you ask me, Karnataka also, there are seafarers union. Goa has got, Maharashtra has got, all are working hand in hand, I can say.
But they have not succeeded.
It's succeeding is like, see, me as if I tell you, no matter if it is a GSI of Goa, no matter is the Indian Union Seafarers from Mumbai, even the activist, if I can say, Glenn Inward also, he's also been trying, pushing, but ultimately it's the final call of the government who has to understand.
Central government.
Yes,
Or state
central.
government.
Even the state government, because if you ask me about Karnataka and Kerala, the CM, every one of theirs, are very, very good, supportive.
Guys, I would like to bring Imtiaz back. Now, Imtiaz, you are in UK. Now, what are you? Is the coordination with the embassy and with the government? How is it? Is it happening? Is it not happening? What is the scene?
We are regularly in touch with the High Commission of India, but as some of things have been highlighted, there has been a delay. Now, I don't know what the delay exactly are for. Is it because of the nationality or different other reasons? It's quite complex to understand, and I would not go too deep into how the Goan politics or the Indian politics works, because I'm sure whatever they are doing, there may be a reason. But all I'm trying to say here is, it is not difficult. We need attention and we need help, and it affects their mental health. That is the crucial thing. That's the most serious thing that we need to pay attention on. And therefore, you will see cases where people are suiciding. There are other mental issues that are arising because of nobody is paying attention on mental health, and we rely on the government, both sides. And if we don't get any support or response from the government, that is when people get confused, as Jude mentioned. And this is where we were trying to give comfort to all these families who are stranded back in Goa and here as well. So we were in a time zone where we were having sleepless nights.
Now let me interrupt you here and go into this mental health issue, which is lockdown depression is become the new sort of a new catchword. Gina, because you are in touch with seafarers, you are in touch with seafarers' families. Not only some may be on the ship, but the families are here. Could you give us a small idea on what is the mindset of these people who are stuck in the ship for, besides the normal term, 90 days, not knowing yes, no, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, and their families here because obviously they are talking on the phone, all this. So could you give us a little bit of an insight?
Yeah, the thing is, even they are mentally disturbed, I can say, very much. Okay, yes. The boys who are, even the females who are stuck, we have got Goan females also on board.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, this I am not aware. How many could you?
You can say maximum we have about 25.
Okay. Mostly on cruise liners?
Yes, cruise liners.
Okay.
So even those females, some of them even had, the first contract, just the first contract.
Okay.
So it was really difficult and, frustrating time for them. I mean, 90 days is not easy. You are getting quarantined inside one room, okay? No matter the company has looked after them a lot, I can say. But then ultimately, it's the home that calls you. It's the family that you want to go back. It's your family who's actually, wanting. Like I spoke to families where families were like, forget the job, you all come home. At this pandemic, we don't want anything, because we heard many suicide cases on the cruise. So we don't want such situation getting into worst, disaster things. And there are many times, even boys get into this trauma thing, like
depression.
Yeah. So that is a very worst phase, whereas the company tries a lot, like not to get them into such phase. So yeah, anything, the company tries their best, but then ultimately it is what they are frustrated, they just want to go back home. It's like after 95 days also, if they don't get an answer, another, like every state, every country takes their crew member home. When it comes to India, they're still stranded over there, hoping for an answer, which they get is like, yeah, paperworks are left here, whatever the reasons are, what Indian government gives them, whatever reasons, they are like, next week, a date is given, cancelled, it goes further. That is more frustrating. Like they're backpacked everything, today they're going to leave and the date gets cancelled.
Let me this on that. Savio, I want to bring you on this. Sorry, Sebi, I want to bring you on this. Sebi, this type of a situation, is it happening in Kuwait also? I've heard some pretty scary stories from Kuwait. Is this also happening there?
India, if you're talking about depression and the COVID-related trauma, yes, I'm absolutely sure that there are a lot of people going through a lot of hell. I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you how it is very exclusive to people who are land-based at this point of time. No disrespect or no, I'm not trying to differentiate between seafarers and land-based expats here, but like what I'm trying to say, point out here is that as a land-based expat, we are more exposed. We have to, like our lockdown is lifted, we have to go to work. To go to work, we have to get into the elevator. We have to go downstairs. We have to take public transport. We have to meet clients. We have to meet our co-workers. We have to go to the general stores to pick up groceries. We have to go to the supermarkets. There is a lot more exposure and there's a lot more fear of contracting the disease. So these type of things. And secondly, at least I live in a place called Salmiya in Kuwait, which is not under lockdown. Okay, we have a curfew at the end of the day, as in from 6 in the evening to 7 in the morning or something like that. But we are not under lockdown. We can move around freely. But there are places here which are under complete lockdown. They can't go in, they can't go out of that place. They are just allowed to move around in that particular locality. So they can't, get their paperwork cleared. They can't get their passports to even fly if there is a flight. And such type of things. They might have put aside a little money to travel, but they can't do it because they can't even finish their formalities. They can't go to their employer's head office to get things done and stuff like that. And imagine what would happen to a person who has lost his job, who has no money to pay his rent, who has no money to buy food, who has no money to recharge his phone, is relying on maybe a friend's hotspot, a Wi-Fi hotspot or something like that. And that level of difficulty is unimaginable. Like how Jude Pereira rightly mentioned, me too. I am also in a pretty, God bless, I'm in a very comfortable position myself as far as finances are concerned, as far as provisions are concerned, and I consider myself fortunate. But I can imagine, and yet I am so going through a lot of difficulties. I can very well imagine what these others must be going through. I don't know. It's terrible.
It's sad, but it's sad. All the more reason I feel it's sad is because people go out on cruises to the Gulf, as we call it, or to England, Paris, wherever, to better themselves financially, better quality of life. But this COVID has brought a lot of this for a lot of people crashing down. And with this, we have come to an end of this episode. We will be back. Thanks for watching.